The Douglas C-47 Dakota, also known as the Skytrain, was introduced first to the United States Army Air Corps by the Douglas Aircraft Company in 1942. It was a military adaptation of the Douglas DC-3, which was initially designed for long-range commercial use. However, an alteration to the Civil Air Regulations airworthiness requirements instigated a complete design overhaul. The C-47 has had an extensive career in the variety of military and civilian applications worldwide. It has been used by over 40 nations' militaries, including the Royal Australian Air Force, the Royal Air Force, the Royal New Zealand Air Force, and the Indonesian Air Force, and now is a prominent exhibition at museums around the globe.
The aircraft stretches 19.43 meters in length with a height of 5.18 meters and has a gross weight of 11,800 kilograms. This low-wing tanker aeroplane is powered by two Pratt & Whitney 14-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engines, each with 3-blade propellers, which enable it to reach a max of 360 kilometers per hour with a ceiling of 10,000 feet and a range of 2,600 kilometers. It is crewed by a pilot, co-pilot, and a navigator, and an additional position is sometimes occupied by a designated radio operator who fills the final seat in the fuselage.
In a civilian context, the predecessor of the Douglas Dakota, the DC-3, and surplus C-47 Dakotas held two key roles: transcontinental passenger transport and cargo transport. With its large capacity, the aircraft could move significant loads at a much faster rate than traditional ship or freight train, and was able to traverse large distances at high speeds to facilitate efficient and timely commercial transport. Although the aircraft gained traction in the civil aviation industry, the onset of World War II led to the conversion of remaining DC-3s into C-47s for military use.
The C-47 Dakota had a variety of tactical applications. Due to its 29.11 meter wingspan and 1,200 horsepower radial engines, the aircraft could take off and land in terrain that would otherwise be inaccessible due to obstacles or limited runway length. This capability was utilized extensively in the islands of the Pacific. However, there was much that the aircraft could do whilst remaining airborne. The C-47 is known for its cargo transport capacity, enabled by the reinforced fuselage in comparison to the DC-3, and could be fitted with a hoist attachment which facilitated airdrops. It was also used as an airborne assault vehicle, most notably during the D-Day landings, where 50,000 paratroopers were dropped behind enemy lines. It was this adaptability that earned the aircraft such an influential career, as it rose to the demands of the evolving military endeavours of the 20th and early 21st centuries.
Although the vast majority of C-47s were equipped with metal benches to seat 28 armed troops, the versatility of the Dakota was acknowledged through a range of variants specific to different mission requirements. The VIP transport variant, the VC-47A, had its metal bench seats and interior fuselage remodeled to accommodate for the transport of important political figures and military officers. Other variants include the RC-47A, used for surveillance and photographic reconnaissance missions, the SC-47D, modified to undertake search and rescue missions, and the C-47D, which was modified for test flights and pilot training.
Additionally, the Dakota could be deployed for medical evacuations, earning the status of being the workhorse of air evacuation as quoted by Sundin 2018. Aside from the regular crew of pilot, co-pilot, and navigator, this variant could hold 18 stretchers and a medical crew of 3, consisting of medical technicians, flight nurses, and flight surgeons who would tend to more critical patients. A famous example of the C-47's successful use as an air ambulance was the evacuation of 4,806 patients into Algiers and Iran in early 1943, which, along with the transport of hundreds of tons of medical supplies and human blood, contributed to the treatment and recovery of thousands of troops throughout World War II.
Some final variants of the C-47 include the AC-47 gunship, nicknamed Spooky, which was fitted with three 7.62mm machine guns. These General Electric miniguns were mounted in by the two window openings furthest back on the left side of the aircraft, with the third mounted by the cargo door on the side of the fuselage, as highlighted by Tegler in 2017. When orbiting a target at an altitude of 3,000 feet, the so-called Spooky gunship could put a bullet into every square yard of a football field-sized target in 3 seconds. The AC-47 was a lethal force, particularly throughout Vietnam War. However, it was quick to experience wear and tear as a result of its combat role. The surviving AC-47 Spookies were phased out of service, rather than remodeled for another role with the Lockheed AC-130 Spectre gunship, which itself is a variant of the C-130 Hercules, filling in as its replacement as of 1969.
There is little further information about some of the most interesting applications of the C-47 Douglas Dakota, but it is easy to imagine the rich and unique history of the aircraft based on the descriptions of the various missions worldwide. One of the Royal Australian Air Force's Dakotas, registered as A65-81, operated out of Antarctica on behalf of the Australian National Antarctic Research Expeditions, where it was eventually damaged beyond repair in 1960 during a blizzard. Other Dakotas were used by the American military to drop illumination flares while circling over Vietnam during World War II, exposing Viet Cong attackers.
The Royal Australian Air Force hosted an impressive fleet of 124 C-47s, which they, like most Commonwealth nations, called the Dakota rather than the US Skytrain. They were first acquired by the RAF in the 1943 and were posted to number 33, 34, 35, 36 and 37 squadrons, as well as number 1 communication unit. The Dakota undertook many World War II operations and subsequently operated in the vast majority of locations the Royal Australian Air Force served, including Japan, Thailand and Korea. Dakotas were utilised by the RAF in many capacities, from standard troop and cargo movements, spraying experiments, medivacs, glider towing and rainmaking. The C-47 did it all. Additionally, Dakotas were posted at 1 FTS, CFS and the School of Air Navigation in training capacity before serving in RAF Base Edinburgh Aircraft Research Development Unit, where they undertook test flight activities.
The RAF C-47 aircrew would train at the aforementioned locations in a similar fashion to modern pilots and mission aircrew officers. Many Dakota pilots had previous two-engine flight experience and thus completed conversion courses at the RAF's Central Flying School in East Sale, with a small portion of C-47 candidates gaining their training at the Royal Australian Navy's Naval Air Station at HMAS Albatross in Nowra, New South Wales. Between 1949 and 1977, 4 ex-RAF C-47 Dakotas were acquired by the Royal Australian Navy for use as flying classrooms for the AS-6 Firefly observers. The Navy installed navigation and anti-submarine stations within the aircraft and added sonar buoy racks underneath the wings, as well as a half door which enabled the naval aircrew to use handheld cameras. The Douglas Dakota was finally retired from the RAF service in 1999, concluding its highly influential 56-year career as part of the Australian Armed Forces.
Some of the most significant flights of the C-47 were along a route famously known as the Hump. This route was the final part of the journey from America to China and connected India to China, Burma and other Asian regions. The name the Hump was derived from the fact that the aircraft needed to climb high over the eastern end of the Himalayan mountains before dropping back down for landing. The first mission along this route was conducted on the 8th of April in 1942, where 30,000 litres of aircraft fuel was transported so that it could resupply the Doolittle Raiders, the first American air attack on the Japanese mainland. After the 1942 defeat of Allied forces in Burma, the C-47s of the Hump were primary suppliers of the retreating army and one of the only ways to evacuate wounded troops, all while regularly supplying the Chinese army with a maximum of 14 serviceable aircraft at any given time. This route and its main airbase, Dinjin, were within the range of Japanese fighter aircraft, which endangered the C-47s as they had no weapons nor an escort of their own. To combat this threat, the Dakotas would utilize the cover of night during takeoffs and landings to avoid detection and fly an 800-kilometer route over the eastern Himalayan uplift known as the high jump. These famous flights allowed many Allied troops to escape from capture and contributed to the Allied troops' successful reclamation of Burma in 1944. The C-47 Douglas Dakota had a highly influential career, contributing significantly to a wide variety of civilian and military endeavours. Its roles within the Royal Australian Air Force were extensive, clearly warranting it a position in the Australian War Memorial's Aviation Museum. From its humble origins to its 50-plus variants, Douglas Dakota has earned itself a valuable place in the history of aviation and will be forever recalled as the founding vehicle of air transportation.